It's raw, it's just off the cuff. So thank you everyone for joining. As I said, we're going to be diving into the nervous system. Leisha's going to be taking us through and sharing her amazing wisdom on the nervous system, and specifically the topic of why we react when we know better. So I cannot wait for this conversation. Over to you, Leashia.
Yeah. Hey. um, yeah, so I did a little poll on my stories, and this was the favorite topic of why we still react even when we know better. And I think um this really is for the people who feel like maybe they've, been on the parenting courses, or they're doing the inner work, they're doing the breath work and the yoga, maybe some personal development work, but they're just feeling like it's not fully translating into real life. And this was really my story. And this is why I'm so excited actually to be talking about this tonight, because um, really the work that I do now and that I share solves this problem, right? It talks to this issue of, oh, I can be calm and peaceful on the yoga mat or in a breathwork session, or I know all the educational pieces of how I'm supposed to show up as a parent or a human being. And I'll probably relate to parenting quite a lot, because I think a lot of us do get really triggered by our kids, and they're like our first. I always say that they're our best healers. They're really there to show us what it is that we need to heal, right? Um, but also this is for people that aren't parents as well, because when I first started doing this journey, I wasn't a parent. I just noticed that in my relationships, and like I said, in everyday life, I could be calm and peaceful on the mat, but as soon as I stepped out of the yoga studio, I wasn't able to stay zen and calm
Mm.
in my everyday life.
Mhm.
Um, and I think as well, being in that field of in the healing industry, and I'm sure
Mhm.
that other people will attend to this as well, is that you have this extra layer of shame around your reactions, because if you've been following the conscious parenting things on Instagram, or you've been
Mhm.
doing some of the self healing, you kind of expect to sort of like learn it and then do it. But what I've come to realize, that the healing industry really misses, is this step in between, this messy middle, right? Um, so yeah, tonight I'm going to be talking about that. And hopefully by the end of this live, you'll really understand why you react even when you know better. I've already alluded to it a little bit, I guess. And what needs to happen before we can actually start to use those tools of breathing and pausing, and why that's actually not working, right? Because I think one of the biggest messages out there is pause and breathe. When you hear, and I don't know if you've got some wisdom or insights to this, Kelly, but I know for me, when you first start thinking about how you're reacting, a lot of the information out there is to pause, breathe, and calm down.
Mm. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, that is true, and that's my experience as well of what
yeah,
I see out there for sure. Yeah.
yeah. If it was that easier, we would all be doing it, right? We'd all just go,
Mm.
oh, okay, yeah, that's what I meant to do. I meant to pause, breathe, and take 5 minutes to check in with myself before I react.
Yes.
Um, that,
Yeah, it's so true. If it was that easy, wouldn't we all just be doing that?
yeah, we would.
Yeah.
Because we know what to do, right? That's the
Yes.
thing. We know
Hmm.
that that's what we're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
But why is it that we can't seem to do that?
So can I
So,
just ask you, Leisha, before you go into this? So when you say like pause, calm, and obviously we're using children as an example. If you're a parent watching this, like we know that our children trigger us daily. Um, but also if you're not a parent, is it just like, when things might piss you off at work, or like your husband or your partner's like chewing loudly or breathing and you just want to like smash his face in? Like, are we talking about those kind of like situations that we all experience? Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, absolutely. It's having that moment in between. It's the pause in between um, the stimuli. So
Hmm.
whatever the event and what's
Yeah.
happened, and how you then respond or react depending
Okay.
on. So when I say react, reaction is stimuli reaction. When we say
Hmm.
respond, it's stimuli, pause, respond. So when we're responding to life, we are choosing how we're showing up.
Mm.
When we're reacting to life, there's no space in between that stimuli and the reaction.
Mm.
And that's when we're showing up in the way that's not necessarily how we want to show up. It's that automatic response that we have when we are what we call triggered, or when we're
Mm.
emotionally reacting to a certain event that's happened.
Yeah, makes
And
sense.
yeah, and this is where the idea of like pause and breathe comes from, right? And I'm not saying that it's wrong.
Hmm.
I'm just saying that it's very crappy advice. Like, it's
Mm.
not, it's what that is the end goal, right? And what people are telling you to do is, oh yeah, just pause and breathe. But there's things that I teach that come in the middle of that need to happen before you can actually reach the pausing and breathing.
Mm.
And the pausing and the breathing
Yeah. It
is,
reminds me of like, let's say I want to go into the gym and like, do a really heavy lift, but you've never done any kind of exercise like that before. You're not just going to go and do that. There's so many things beforehand. Like you need to learn the technique. You need to, build that trust within yourself, and then like slowly, gradually. Is it like a similar thing where you're like putting like a foundation down and bringing like a few pieces in, and then you're going to talk us through that, right?
yes, that is
Amazing.
quite a nice. I do actually quite like that analogy, Kelly. That's quite nice. What I what I normally say is, as well, is telling someone who is reacting to the stimuli in their life, so feeling triggered by
Hmm.
outside events,
Yeah.
telling them to just pause and breathe is like putting a band-aid on a broken leg.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it might cover the cut that's happened because it's broken, right? It might cover that, but it doesn't go, it's just the surface layer. It doesn't go to the
Mm.
depth of like, well, you might need to go to the hospital, and you might actually need to have a cast put on, right?
Yeah.
For that to fully heal.
Yeah, I like
So
that
the
analogy.
plaster
That's
might
good.
help the surface level wound, right?
Yes.
So the pausing and breathing is going to help the surface level wound.
Hmm.
But if we just leave the broken leg and we don't go to the hospital and get a cast, we're just going to keep, it's never going to fully heal. And we're
Mm.
going to keep repeating the injury, the pattern, what we call the
Mm.
pattern, right?
Yeah.
So if we never go deeper than that surface level, we're going to be constantly pushing up against whatever it is, the trigger that's happening. And that's why then it starts to feel really exhausting, because what we're doing is we're performing calm. So we're performing calm, we're calm, we're calm, we're calm, but eventually we can't be calm anymore because our cup is too full.
Mm.
And then we
Yeah.
explode. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like
Yeah.
putting the lid on the boiling water. If you just leave it there with the heat underneath,
Mm.
it's gonna
Yeah.
boil over, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what a lot of the regulation tools and nervous system work, and I love the nervous system, and that's where this work begins, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not where it finishes. And I think
Mm.
that's what makes my work really different to stuff that's out there, is that through doing the work that I do, I've identified 3 pillars that you need to be able to create better relationships with yourself
Mm-hmm.
and with other people. And I'm actually going to be sharing those tonight in
Oh,
this
cool.
live, so that's
Exciting.
exciting.
Mm-hmm.
um but yeah, I'd love to circle back to, you know, why is it that we react even though
Mm.
we know better? And we've kind
Mm-hmm.
of alluded to it already, but really, what's important to know, I think, is that, you know, sometimes we can think, oh, we're reacting because our child isn't listening, or because our partner's not listening, or it's, you know, pointing the finger and pushing the
Mm-hmm.
blame, and everyone else is wrong. My boss has done this, so therefore I've done, you know, I'm reacting in this way. Um, but a lot of the time, what's really happening is they are triggering something inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that you still react, even though you know better, is because there is a really big disconnection between like the education part of, like, let's go for an example with, give me something that you react to, that even though you know better, tell me something. Have you got something that
Well,
you
I
think?
reacted the other night. I shared it on my one of a post where my children, it was the bath time routine, and it was just like one thing after the other. And it was like you said, it was like this feeling of the pot was full and it was overflowing, and I just couldn't keep it in. It was just, no matter how hard I tried. Well, I didn't even get a chance to try. There was no space between. There was zero space.
Yeah.
I reacted, and and then I did it, and then I was like, "Ooh, damn, shouldn't have done that." But I didn't have any control over it.
Yeah, so your nervous system went into survival mode, right? So when our nervous
Yes.
system goes into a survival mode and gets hijacked by our emotions, um, we no longer have our what we call the logical brain online. So as
Mm,
soon as we go into survival, we are now responding from our automatic system. So it's an automatic reaction. It's like,
mm,
when we get in the car, the first few times we're learning, we don't really know what we're doing, we're fumbling, we're learning how to drive. But after that, it becomes like an automatic thing. And imagine if
mhm,
every time we got in a car, we had to relearn how to drive, right?
yeah.
That is the part of the brain that's automatic, and it's our survival part of our brain. It's like, when we call it like going into autopilot, when you
Mm,
like have driven somewhere 100 times and you know the way, and you get there and you're like, how did I even get here?
yeah. Oh,
We
yeah.
all
That's
have those
so funny.
experiences,
Yes.
right? And these are our imprints. These are our, we need that part of the system, is what I'm saying. Is like, let's not like get this information tonight and then go into like the shaming and blaming ourselves because, you
Mm,
know, it's such terrible
mm,
parents and human beings. It's like, this is such an important part of our system, and this is developed from when we're in utero all the way up until around the age of 7. So, a lot of the time, when we are reacting from that survival brain, we're not reacting from that present moment. So we're not reacting from our wise adult self, our logical.
Mm.
We're reacting from normally our inner child,
Mhm.
or a childhood experience, or past wounds, past fears, unmet needs.
Mm.
And this is why also the boundaries work, right, is so important, because that's our unmet needs. I'll go into that a little bit more as we go down the
Mhm.
track. But that's normally where what we're responding from, right? So let me ask you a question, yeah?
Mhm.
So when you reacted, what was your feeling? What did you feel? How did you feel?
And I was really angry.
Yeah,
Yes. I was angry. I was frustrated. I was, I felt really unheard,
unheard.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of the times when we're triggered, right, we feel powerless,
Mhm.
we feel helpless, or we feel fearful. And then also shame and all those things can come in, anger,
Mhm.
frustration. But what I really like to talk about is these feelings of powerlessness, helplessness, and that fear. Because I think when you think about feeling like that, one, how are you going to show up as a parent when you feel powerless, helpless, and fearful? And
Mhm.
two, when you think about how you felt as a child, a lot of the time, even if you grew up in a household where you had so much love and joy, and your parents were emotionally attuned and they were conscious, which most of us didn't, right? But let's say we did,
Mm.
there's still going to be so many moments in your childhood where
Mhm.
you felt powerless,
Mhm.
helpless, and fearful.
Mm. True.
And what happens is then we're taught that our emotions or our voices aren't allowed to be heard. We're not allowed to be seen, heard. We're told to be a good girl, stop
Mhm.
crying, don't cry like a little girl. No one likes
Mm.
an angry child. Um, that's our conditioning, right? That's our
Mm.
patterns. And if we're still running those stories in the background, um, that's going to also affect how we show up as well. So the reason why you still react, even when you know better, is because you're not responding to the situation from your present self. You're responding to the situation from a past experience. And we tend to, as humans, recycle a lot of our emotions. We're not. A lot of the time, we're not experiencing a brand new emotion. What we're doing is we're recycling an old emotion, a past experience, and that's where the label like trigger comes from, or trigger work. Trigger
Mhm.
work is looking at our old patterns of stored emotional baggage, right? Imagine you've got a backpack, and every time you've had an emotional an event happen to you, a rock goes in the backpack, and we're not taught when we're younger. We don't get taught, a lot of us, we get taught to read and write and do maths, but we're not
Mm.
taught how to process our emotions, how to
Mm.
feel. A lot of the time we're taught to suppress,
Mm.
repress, don't show, don't show your feelings, especially if we grew up um in a household where our emotions weren't welcomed, and
Mm.
even the school system, right? Like us, and we talked about this last week, is like our culture's actually just not made for people with emotions, like the human experience, and we're told
No.
anger's bad, and all the things,
Yeah.
and even if you do come from a household, I think, where they do have this emotional awareness, it seems to really run deep, this idea of like you shouldn't cry and shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
angry and all those things. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, you can imagine each time you have an emotional experience, a rock goes in the backpack, and by the time you get to 35, or you're in your 40s, you've got a pretty heavy backpack if you haven't done any inner work,
Yes.
right? If you haven't looked at any of those
Yeah.
past traumatic experiences, and people don't want to, everyone thinks, oh, I haven't got trauma because I didn't go to war, or I
Mm.
wasn't abused, and da, da, da. But I'd really love to highlight that trauma is a spectrum. And like I said, even if it was that, we got left at school accidentally by our parents one time, that will emotionally scar us. Like,
Mm.
whether it was intentional or not, like,
Mm-hmm.
we're still going to feel something. Yeah, we're going to feel a certain type of way. And if that's never addressed, and we never get to voice how we felt to someone safe, and it to
Mm-hmm.
really land and feel heard and feel seen, and it to move through us, or to for us to feel that, um then it just goes in our emotional backpack
Mm.
until a time that we can process it.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens a lot of the time is it never gets processed, and then it comes out in funny ways, and it ends up landing on the people that we love most.
Mm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
triggers, I'd like to really highlight that as well. When we do have our triggers, that's not proof that like you're failing at being a parent or being a
Yeah.
human being, right? Our triggers really are an opportunity for us to lean in and to say, oh, okay, like, what was happening here? What happened here? And a lot of the time we jump into like shaming ourselves, feeling
Mm.
guilty, and thinking, oh, why do I react like that? I hate that part of me. And we try to fix or push away.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do in my work is I teach women to lean in. And
Mm.
I do that through my emotional freedom framework, which is a seven step framework that I created to help people heal their triggers,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what helped me heal my triggers and unpack my triggers, not just with kids, but with my partner, with friendships.
Mm.
There's we're being triggered a lot of all the
Mm.
time, by all different
Yes.
kinds of things. So,
Mm-hmm.
really, um, I think that that is one of the pillars, right? That is one of the steps,
Mm-hmm.
um, to do. It's really like an awareness tool, I guess, that helps you become really aware of like what is happening and why it is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And once we have that level of awareness, then we can go and look and say, oh, okay, well, I need to heal this story, and I need to set this boundary for
Mm-hmm.
this to not keep reoccurring. And when we go deeper than, the band-aid level of like,
Mm-hmm.
just pause and breathe, and putting the band-aid on the broken leg, when we go to the hospital, we heal the trigger, right? We
Mm-hmm.
get underneath and we understand why we're triggered, what's going on, and then the cast that holds everything together while we're doing the healing work is the loving boundaries, is the learning to set those loving
Mm-hmm.
boundaries. And they're really the three main pillars that I bring into, I call it the embodied queen method. And that's the three pillars that I bring into my programs is one, know your nervous system, two, heal your triggers, and three, set loving boundaries to create that deeper relationship with knowing yourself, and also the relationship with your loved ones as well.
Love that. And I love that analogy of like the backpack with the rocks. And I know that I hear this term a lot. And like with the triggers, it's like that saying like when a wound has been activated, that's the same thing, right? It's almost like this rock that's like the wound's been activating, and like you said, the leaning in. And I just had a really cool like visual then when you were explaining all that. I was like, can just imagine like, you know, us like, let's just say mums that have just a really heavy backpack, and like my example over the weekend where I just reacted and exploded. It's like, okay, oh, I've got this rock here. What am I going to do with it? Am I going to lean in and get curious and inquire and maybe like complete the process so that I can, and I guess like feel the full emotion so I can like get rid of that rock and my bag's a bit lighter? Or do I just not do anything with it and keep it in? And then
Yeah.
and then it pops out again and again. And I guess like that's the work, isn't it? It's like when it pops out, you gotta like clear it and not put it back in. And that is leaning in to that discomfort. And that is the work, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I love that. It's like, yeah, are you gonna just put the rock back in? And I think that's probably like one of the biggest things that is missing in the industry as well, is like we all hear the ideas, right? Oh, regulate your nervous system, heal your triggers, but it's like how? How do
Yeah.
we like how do
Yes.
we do
What do
that?
we do with this rock now? Like
What
what? So what would you say then? Like
does
just
that
really,
actually look like?
yeah. So if someone's like, okay, yes, I've got the rock, I've got the backpack, the rocks explode out, I lean in, what do I do to make my backpack lighter so that I don't keep doing that with my kids again and again? How do I actually create some space in between so that I don't just always react and I naturally have some time to kind of pause and choose a different way? What's the how?
So the how is come on my Heal Your Triggers program, and I will give you my framework. Maybe I'll teach that in a live. But I think the best place to start is, like you say, instead of putting it in the backpack first. I think when it comes to healing, um, the biggest shift for me has been, you know, like you say, this reaction happens, right? And then you've got this, it pops out the backpack, you've got this rock in your hand, and you can sit and you can shame that rock and tell it you're a terrible mum, you're a terrible human, no one likes you, why do you keep reacting this way? Or we can soften into curiosity and compassion.
Mhm.
And I think that's really what healing work
Mm,
is being able to step out of our shame and our blame
mhm,
and to really turn towards ourselves with this curiosity and this compassion, and start to inquire. And sometimes we don't even need to do much more, depending on how deep the story is, how deep the trigger is. But yeah, I would really urge people to bring more compassion and curiosity into their life, and notice, like, when you are triggered, ask yourself the question, what is the story beneath this reaction,
mm,
you know and really noticing how it felt, you know, the
Mm.
power, feeling powerless, feeling helpless, was fear driving that reaction. You know, my daughter today, she went off down the street. She bought a new outfit and she really wanted to show her sister. And the the little school that her sister goes to is just down at the end of the street. So she went up, took herself off down to the end of the street, and I'm like walking around the house like, Rosie, where are you? Full panic mode, thinking
Mm.
the anyway, I've come out the front of the house because it's not the first time she's gone out the front of the house, and we've had the conversation and said we don't play out the front on our own, da, 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 all the things. But you know, she's 5.5 and she likes to do what she likes to do. And yeah, off she went. And then I went outside and obviously I saw her down the bottom of the street. Um, and I actually didn't react didn't start shouting at her or anything, but I could feel in my body, the fear. It was
Mm.
just like so overwhelming, you know, and
Mhm.
all the thoughts. But the main thought for me and the main feeling was shame. It was like, how could you have like been so engrossed in what you were doing that you didn't
Mhm.
notice that your daughter had like gone out of the front door and walked down the street?
That's crazy.
Do you know what I
It's like,
mean?
yeah. And in that moment, it's like you don't have no control over it, even though like logically and consciously or someone else looking at the situation would be like, oh, that could happen to anyone, you know, she's 5, you haven't done anything wrong. But it's like in the moment,
Yeah.
what comes up.
I think if I didn't have all the awareness, the self-awareness, you know, that tuning into the compassion, and all the things that I know and practice, um, I could have easily just like lost it, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just been like, oh my God, da, 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 da,
Mm.
da, 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 da.
Mm.
And yeah, I did. I cried. I was like, you could have been taken. You know, I was so scared. And I told her all the
Mhm.
things that I was feeling. And then she was crying. And, you know, we hugged and da, 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 and, you know, I'm like, hopefully now she really like
Mm.
gets it. But yeah.
I loved what you said as well about just that compassion piece. I think that's not like it is spoken about, but I think what I see more in relation to what we're talking about, you know, online and listen to podcasts is like, yes, feel the feelings that come up, feel the emotions, because to feel is to heal, of course. But I don't hear much about. Well, I do, but it's like you've really highlighted it in a way, and I don't know if it's just landed for me a bit different today because I know that, like, I know this consciously that that reaction, that feeling is, you know, that younger part of us, like you said, that part of that nervous system that was being affected when we were younger because we weren't, you know, the fear or not seen or whatever it might be. And, it's that younger part within you that's kind of like reacting or screaming. And when you just said that, then is like having that compassion for yourself, it
Mm,
just, I don't know, felt in my heart because it's like, yes, like having that compassion for that younger version of you and you in that moment. And it's almost like this, if you've ever done any inner child healing and everyone watching, it's this integration piece, isn't it? Where it's like this younger part of you that you are like integrating, and that's how we become like whole, as we slowly like integrate these pieces. And I think just the way that you said that really landed for me of like, okay, this is why this is so important to, yeah, approach it with this curiosity and this compassion and empathy and just softness, like you said, you know, and almost. treating us like we would our kids, the exact same way. So I try to say to my clients as well, like, how would you speak to your own child, or how would you speak to your best friend or your little sister? And that's exactly how we should be speaking to ourselves when we have these reactions, because we are only human. And like you said, the more that we go, oh God, I'm a shit mom, and it's just, you could just get stuck in the spiral, don't you? And you never will be able to stop, not stop, but it will be more challenging to react in a different way. So yeah, I loved how you just explained that. That really landed. That really, like, I felt that in my body, I was like, ah, yes. What would you say to those that, are, trying to create this bit of space between the trigger and how we react, and are working towards getting to create more space, but obviously are still reacting maybe a bit more than what they would like? And of course, like, having the compassion. Do you have any advice or tips for how to manage the situation after, especially if it involves like your children? If you're not proud of the way that you spoke or reacted or swore or whatever. And then I guess like the repair piece after. Do you have any tips for everyone watching in relation to that?
Yeah, so this is like really like the pillar three, right? It's the loving boundaries. It's in within that is also the repair work, is, even not just with your kids, but
Mm.
with anyone,
Mm-hmm.
is owning your part,
Mm.
and going and doing the repair work, and not then falling into the blaming or the shaming then as well, so we're
Mm.
going back and we're saying, sorry, I shouted at you, that wasn't okay. Not,
Mm.
I'm really sorry I shouted at you, but
Mm.
you really
You
annoyed
should have
me
listened.
because you
Yeah.
did this and then you did that. That's not how we
Mm.
apologize or take ownership
Mm.
for our part. And I think a lot of the work that, healing work is that self responsibility, and um choosing to own where we've messed up, and we can also like do that with ourselves as well, repairing that repair work with yourself. And that is the
Mm.
compassion piece, right? That is that moment of like noticing of like, oh, I didn't show up the way that I wanted to in that situation, and saying it's okay, like, I'm human,
Mm.
I'm having a human experience, and actually there's nothing wrong with me being angry. From our emotions are here, they're functional. Our emotions are functional. And what I mean
Mm.
by that is that they have a function. So they're here to, if you're feeling frustrated, or if you're feeling resentful, if you're feeling angry, that's normally a sign somewhere that a boundary is being crossed, or
Mm.
you are not setting a limit for yourself in some way, or showing up for
Mm.
yourself in some way. So, it's also, um this work isn't about never being triggered.
Mm.
And it's about um leaning in when we are triggered, and really learning from letting our triggers be our guides, letting our triggers teach us what it is that we need to look at.
I love that. And I think, when we are dealing with our children, especially if we can model that, because ultimately like they're going to get triggered, they're going to have feeling, they're going to have their explosions and so along the line. Like, of course they are, they're human. Like, that's what we are, we're humans. And if we can model like that, yeah, like that repair and being compassionate with ourselves, that means that they will see us do it. And then hopefully when they're older, and even now, like, they'll do that as well, just naturally. Um, but also,
Yes, so beautiful. My
yeah.
youngest daughter, she is so good at repairing.
Mhm.
She will often, if there's been a bit of a fallout, she will often come to me before I go to her. She's so.
Really?
And then my other daughter, she's a little bit more, she needs a bit more time and a bit more space,
Yeah.
as do I. And yeah, she needs a bit more time and space, but I'm always, and sometimes she's quite happy to skip over that part. So that's been a big process with her. But when I do hear her do the repair work, like especially with her sister,
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh,
So good.
so
There's
beautiful.
a really good question here from Rachel. She says, "How do you suggest that when you go to, when you go to repair and take accountability, to then also address the circumstances and situation with them? I find myself repairing after the rupture, but then finding myself feeling off about needing to discuss the situation, as I feel it takes away from from my accountability."
Yeah, I would definitely, if there is a teaching moment within that, obviously there often is when there's been a rupture, I would do it at a separate occasion, um, unless there is a conversation, an open conversation, and they're inquiring, like if they're asking questions about something,
Mm,
or you feel like there's an opening, like if it naturally then leads into like this teaching moment,
mm,
like with a child. With adults, I would say it is a little bit different.
mhm,
And you know, you could be like, I'm really sorry for how I showed up then. That's really not how I want to present myself. Can we like talk about what happened? Because it's, you know, it's really not how I want to show up. But
mm.
I think that something needs to happen so I can show up how I want to show up. And
Yeah.
that's normally when you're like setting a boundary or whatever it is.
Mm,
With children, obviously, if it's a teaching moment, sometimes just doing the sorry part is enough first. And then, you know, later on at bedtime, when you're having some connection time or whenever it is, you do have a little bit of connection time, but always revisiting. Um, always, yeah, I always revisit everything
mhm.
at a later stage because,
Once
yeah,
everyone's calm. And
yes.
yeah, Rachel was just saying, yeah, it's the behavior that's triggered her. So, okay, here we go. So her eldest is 4.5, and it's all new terrain, and I'm desperate to repair, but feel wrong for the way I then need to address her behavior and so forth. As I feel in the moment, it takes away my apology. But yeah, it's tricky, I guess, when they're really young. And I guess this we could do a whole nother live on this, couldn't we? Because I know that you did a post recently about children and their reactions and their, I guess, like behaviors,
Mm.
um, which is a huge topic of conversation. But I guess in this circumstance, would you suggest, Leisha, that just to, yeah, repair in the moment, and then just depending on what it was and how heightened everybody got, it just depends on if you would address the behavior there or maybe wait until another time, and just if you're and please correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're addressing like the behavior, is it just being clear with like the boundary or the expectation of what the behavior should be in your house to a degree, and of course taking into account age and everything else. It's so nuanced, isn't it, depending on your family and the age of the children. So what do you have to say about that, Leisha?
Yeah, I think from what I'm hearing is I would say keep them as separate as you can. So depending, you know, I'm not sure what the behavior is, but let's just say, I don't know, your 4.5-year-old keeps jumping on the sofa and you don't want them to, and then you're losing it. And then, you know, there's a fallout, and then you're going back and you're saying, Mummy, I shouldn't have um, shouted at you. I'm really sorry. And then you have the hug and the togetherness. And then later on, you might address the behaviour and why we don't. jump on sofas in this household. Um,
Mhm.
I would try to keep it as separate as possible,
Mm.
especially the younger they are. Um, and yeah, just keeping an eye on like your own expectation of how many times you're going to have to follow up that conversation. Like I was saying with the conversation with Rosie earlier, I think why it felt so annoying and frustrating for me as well is because it wasn't the first time we was having the conversation,
Mm.
right? So that adds like that layer of like we've already had this conversation,
Mm.
but you know that's where we need like have to sort of like rein ourselves in and be like, okay, well,
Well, that
she's
is
fine,
so
that's
young.
like,
Yeah.
you know, it's gonna have to keep
Mm.
being reiterated
Yeah.
and for it to fully land as
Yeah. So Rachel's just said there, you've given me a great idea. So to apologize and discuss the feelings we all had, which may lead into that ability to discuss the behavior. But she said all valid points, thank you. And yes, so for jumping is one. Yes. And I think one thing that I've learned, which is a bit of off topic, but one thing that I was struggling with is my boundaries weren't clear for my children.
Mm,
Um, they didn't know what the boundaries were. And that
yeah,
was the problem. So I was getting triggered about things and I was getting annoyed about things, but they didn't know what the boundary was. So we actually sat down as a family and we created some family commitments. And now everyone knows the boundaries and what is expected. And that is like, I hold it to that because everyone knows what it is. Yeah. So that's been
yeah.
super helpful.
And I think that's really interesting point that you've made there, Kelly, as well, because it's like sometimes we don't, again, and this is why our triggers are so important, right? Sometimes we don't know what the boundaries are until we're triggered. So, like,
Mm.
as well, we can't, as adults, we don't always predict like what crazy things our kids are going to do, like until
Yeah.
they do it, and then you
Mm.
have the reaction, and then you go, oh, okay, I'm not okay with that, you know.
Mm.
So even just like knowing that, you know, yeah, you've lost it with the child, but at least now, like if you can take a learning from that, it's like at least now you know I'm not okay with them jumping on my sofa
Mm.
that I paid 4 grand for. I'm not okay with that. But at least you
Yeah.
know that now, and then you
Yes.
can go and say, sorry, I did that. I shouldn't have shouted at you. I'd really appreciate you not jumping on the sofa
Yeah.
because, and whatever your reasons might be or whatever. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like
Mhm.
you've learned from that, from the
Mm.
trigger, that you need to
Mhm.
set a boundary, and then you can
Mm.
set a boundary, and then that doesn't mean that people are going to honor it.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that yeah they're going to listen every single time, and
Yeah.
let go of that expectation of like, but we know in on our body and our minds that that is what the boundary is for us. So then the next time it shows up, we already know that we're not okay with it, so we can just go straight into the boundary and skip the reaction.
I love that. And then I guess with that, so even though, okay, oh, I realize I don't like them jumping on the couch, but it's still activating something within you that's really not relevant to the couch. That's just a situation that's presented itself, I guess, for a boundary. But it's still important to heal that part of us that's reactive because even though, okay, I didn't like that, now I have a boundary for the couch, but then something else is going to happen and then that's going to react again. So it's like this is the importance, isn't it, of the healing. And then over time your reactions might not be as big and bold and reactive to like those said couch situations. You might just be like, oh yeah, I'm triggered by that, but I'm not gonna like scream at you. I'm just gonna say, when like I'm activated by that and we're not actually gonna be doing that anymore. We're not gonna be riding scooters in the house anymore, boys. That's basically
Yeah,
my house. Even though I
yeah,
let them do it. So but again,
yeah.
every
So it's like
household is different.
yeah. So it's like the couch. Yeah, they're right. So the cat, them jumping on the couch has triggered you. You can look at like that story, right, and be like, Oh, that's interesting. So, why was that so triggering? And this is what my emotional freedom framework lets you do, right? So, once you've been triggered, you don't try and do anything in the moment. You're triggered, you've done the thing, and then you go, oh, I was really triggered there. Like, I'm going to go now take the self responsibility. I'm going to go through the framework, see what it was all about. Like, what is that story? Oh, I wasn't allowed to jump on the couch when I was that age. So that's
Mm.
probably triggering for me. And
Hmm.
then you can, like, once you can see that clearly, right, you can then make a decision of like, okay, am I actually going to let go of that story and be like, no, I want my kids to be able to jump on my couch. Like, I don't care, like, whatever. Or are you still like, no, that's actually really important to me, you know, whatever your
Yeah.
reasons are, all is valid, all is welcome. There's no right or wrong way to parent. There's no, you know,
Yeah.
in some houses, in my house, they're allowed to jump on my couch. I don't care, like, whatever.
Mm.
I'm not, that's not
Hmm.
a thing for me. But for a lot of parents
Mm.
that I work with, that is a thing. And that's
Hmm.
okay. Like,
Yeah.
but let's look at the story of like
Hmm.
why that's not okay, and then we can like choose a new story if we want to choose a new story, or we can be like, no, I'm not okay with that, and set the boundary.
I love that. I think that's been really clear and given a lot of clarity to people, maybe of like the how, because again, we can be quite conditioned to like you said, how we parent and the way we parent. So if you do see your kid like jumping on the couch, is that your conditioning that it's bad, you know? And it's just getting really curious. Well, what do I think? Like, what do I want? And you
Yeah,
can have whatever you want in your family, you know, home, and you can have whatever rules you want and whatever you want, but it's about deciding like what is true for you and what feels right for you, not like someone else's version or, you know, your parents or
mm,
your friends or your sisters or whoever. And I
yeah,
really love that because it's like it's not black or white, it's just so unique and nuanced and individual to you and the people in your family, and I just love that.
yeah, that's what I love about this work as well. It's like once you can see the stories and the patterns and like
Mm.
the thoughts and the emotions and the reactions of like your behind your triggers, it just gives you so much more like freedom, and it
Mm.
gives you so much more power to then like choose the stories that you want to keep and like also change what you want to change. Um and yeah, I just love that it's so unique to everyone's um ideas of how they want to bring their family up. You know, I have to have
Hmm.
conversations with my children around, okay, we're allowed to jump on our couch at home, but we're
Mm.
not going to go around other people's houses and like jump
Hmm.
on the couch because they might not like that, you know? So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
just so like one and I think this really highlights as well, Kelly, how our triggers do relate to our conditioning, is because what
Yes.
might be triggering for one person is like totally cool and fine with another person, right?
Mm.
So it really
Yeah.
is
Oh, I feel like this
like
is even
your
another topic.
perception,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
how you were raised is your lens of what kind of
Yeah.
glasses you wear through life,
Yeah.
and you get to choose whether you want to take them glasses off and buy a new pair of glasses, or whether you want
Yeah.
to change the color of the glasses, or you get to choose when
Yeah.
you do this work. If you don't do the work, you don't get to choose because you just carry on in the same
Yeah.
loops and patterns and cycles.
Yeah. And I
So,
just want to add one thing here, which is really funny, which I've noticed is, isn't it funny how when like a parent will be triggered by another parent by how they, well, by what they're triggered by? You know, if something happens and a parent reacts about a child saying something, and then you see this parent being triggered by the way that they're react, like their reaction, and it's just like it's just that's, I find fascinating, you know, because we all have, yeah, like you said, our own individual conditioning, and what will trigger one person might not trigger another, and like that is okay.
yeah.
Yeah, such good conversations. Thank you so much for your amazing wisdom. I've definitely learned a lot, and it's given me a few things to add to my toolbox and just think about next time that I have, yeah, that reaction. I guess to deepen my own practice. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining and the amazing questions from you, Rachel. That was really good. Love that.
Yeah, that was amazing. I really want to just say thank you to Rachel as well, because it's always so much easier to um know where to lead the conversation when you've
Mm.
got people there with an actual real question, and
Hmm.
they really want some insights. So yeah, I really appreciate you being vulnerable and brave and writing that in there. And this is what we created these lives for, so that we can connect with you guys and yeah, all help each other. So
Yeah,
yeah,
amazing. So good. Well, thank you, Leisha. And we'll see everyone back here same time next week. And we're going to be diving into some human design information. So excited for that.
wonderful. Can't wait.
Amazing. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next time. Bye.
Namaste.
Namaste.